Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for March 14th. This is Gina McGuire. Over the last week, we've had plenty of precipitation over northern and western sides of the Great Basin, especially across Idaho, northern Nevada, and the Sierra, where these areas have seen well above normal precipitation. However, drier conditions continue over the southern half of the Great Basin, with only precipitation that we've seen in the last week has generally been light and below normal. Today, looking at the water vapor satellite image, we can see very strong wind flow across much of the Great Basin as an area of low pressure off the northwest coast starts to move eastward, and again this will continue with those stronger winds today along with some precipitation over the northern half of the Great Basin. Therefore, with the strong winds, ventilation indices will remain very good, with good dispersion in most areas, with the exception of far southern Nevada where the winds will remain lighter today. Looking at the individual components of the ventilation index, transport winds on the left shows the very strong wind flow in most areas, with gusts today expected above 45 miles per hour across much of the Great Basin, with again the exception of the Arizona Strip and far southern Nevada, which will see much lighter winds today. Also, the mixing height will remain very high across most areas. Looking at the outlook for Tuesday, the weather pattern, the area of low pressure moves off to the east, still keeping some precipitation and clouds and breezy winds over northern and eastern sides of the Great Basin, with now lighter winds starting to emerge over the Sierra into southern and western Nevada. Therefore, the ventilation index will decrease significantly over the western and far southern portion of the Great Basin and still remain very good over the rest of the area. Looking at the individual components, again the transport winds on the left showing the stronger winds still continuing on Tuesday over parts of Idaho into the northern and eastern side of Utah and Wyoming, with much weaker winds as you move further west. Also, the mixing height will remain very high over the eastern side of the Great Basin, and over Nevada and the Sierra will be decreasing as high pressure starts to build in across the region. This strong ridge of high pressure will set up along the west coast by Wednesday and eventually push eastward across the Great Basin as we move through the mid to later portion of the week. Therefore, ventilation indices and dispersion will decrease more significantly over much of Nevada into southern and western Utah as we move towards Wednesday. Looking at the individual components, once again, the transport winds, very light winds expected under the ridge, still breezy winds across Idaho and Wyoming, along with higher mixing heights. Therefore, we'll see better dispersion in those areas still on Wednesday, with poor dispersion other areas of the Great Basin further south and west. Looking at the Utah Forecast Clearing Index for the next few days, the clearing index will remain very high with those stronger winds across Utah through Tuesday, but by Wednesday we'll start to see the clearing index decrease, especially over the southern and western portion of Utah, but still remain very good in the north and along parts of the Uinta Basin and Uinta Mountains. Looking at the overall forecast amount of precipitation through Thursday, most of the rainfall and snowfall will occur over the northern half of the Great Basin, with some areas of Idaho and Wyoming seeing over an inch of total precipitation. Further south and west, any showers we see in the Sierra and into northern Nevada will likely produce less than a half inch of total precipitation. Now we'll look at the extended outlook from later this week through this weekend. The ventilation index maps on the right are not working, so we'll focus our attention on the left-hand map, the weather pattern, and we see this ridge of high pressure still dominant by Thursday through the end of the week over much of the western half of the Great Basin, and again this will allow for much lighter wind flow and poor dispersion. We still may see good areas of dispersion over parts of southeast Idaho into Wyoming as we see slightly stronger winds on Thursday. By Friday, this ridge of high pressure moves east across all of the Great Basin, with decreasing winds in all areas and poor dispersion expected Friday and into the weekend. We may see winds increase over the far northern portion of the Great Basin as an area of low pressure starts to approach, so we may see dispersion increase somewhat across Idaho as we move towards Saturday and Sunday, but still poor dispersion is expected across the rest of the Great Basin. We also may start to see some shower activity move over parts of Idaho as we move through the weekend. However, any precipitation will generally be on the lighter side. Looking at the total expected precipitation amounts from Thursday through early Saturday, and you can see again generally light precipitation over much of southeast Idaho into Wyoming, with most areas seeing less than 1/4 of an inch of total precipitation. Looking at the extended outlook through the end of March, we'll likely see a return or continued above normal temperatures, along with below normal precipitation over the southern half of the Great Basin, with most of the precipitation focused across Idaho. That concludes our briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.